SCAD in Atlanta in interior design. My background's in interior design and architecture. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some research that myself and one of my MFA thesis students, Xing, did this past year. We're going to talk a little bit about the creative process and how that relates to the environment. So one of the questions that the student came up with is she said, what is the link between being creative and the space that you're in? She said, I've got this instinct that there's got to be a connection, because there's places where you work really well and you get a lot done, and then there's places where you just don't. So she started asking some questions like, what is creativity? And can the ability to think creatively be fostered by habits that we have, or steps that we take, or things that we do? She was particularly interested in, could we practice these habits in a particular environment that would encourage them and sort of maintain this behavior? And so she's pretty interested in trying to figure out if there was a connection. Now, one of the things that's challenging about creativity is that we know that it's very different for different things. So she started basically trying to figure out what creativity was, and the definition that she found the most useful was creativity is about innovation and usefulness for task or program. World-changing acts of creativity included in the idea, act, or product, which is an existing domain that transforms an existing thing into a new one. So what she found out was happening is that there's sort of creativity with a little c, which could be creative things that we do all the time to help us solve a problem or make something work a little bit better. And then there was creativity with a big C that was like world-changing innovation. And most of us practice someplace in the middle. A lot of us aren't going to do those really, really big things. But she found out as she looked through a lot of different researchers and neuroscientists and artists and all kinds of people that there was this little process, and it's not a linear process, but the steps that people take in being creative are the following. We've got to get prepared. So like we have to get whatever it is that we do, we take steps to prepare to do it. So if you're a painter, you get together your paints. If you're a gamer, maybe you turn on your music and put on your headphones. Whatever it is that you have. There's an incubation period where ideas are just sort of sitting there and they're kind of churning and we're driving around thinking about them, or in the grocery store and something pops up and then they just sort of lay dormant for a while. And then there's insight that happens, and usually this happens not when we're concentrating on it, right? It happens out of the blue. You're in the shower and you realize how to solve the problem that you've been working on for a month, that you just couldn't get. There's an evaluation, which means that we get some feedback from somebody else. We bounce back ideas, or we show them a prototype, or we get some sort of criticism or critique. And then there's some sort of elaboration, which means that we really start to dig into it and make it more finite and make it very clear and really sort of produce that thing in our creative process. What's interesting is that we can do these steps, and they don't always happen in the same way, like they kind of mix around and jump up and down, kind of like a ping pong ball. But we can do these better when we have a system in place to help us do that. So one of the books that was really helpful in looking at this is Twyla Tharp's The Habit of the Creative Process. And she really talks about how her daily activities and habits helped her be a creative dancer most of her entire life. And she doesn't say things like, well, working out at the gym. She's like, putting on my shoes to go work out at the gym, or for her, she rode a taxi in New York City to the gym, or to the dance studio. And so it was like getting in the taxi was part of the ritual that started the process. And so we all have these rituals that we go through. But we need to look at whether or not we've got easy, accessible knowledge that we can transfer to others, be able to train in whatever our discipline is, have mentors and other people to help us in the process, and then get some sort of reward out of it is a really important thing. The interesting thing is that the environment helps us in a lot of different ways. The environment needs to reflect our own needs and ourselves, as well as reflect others, to give us creativity from other people. And there's got to be some sort of room for novelty. If we're always looking at the same thing, our creativity tends to dwindle. We need something sort of new and interesting. So this is why taking a walk brings us new ideas, just because we've gotten out of the office and we're getting into someplace new. So the most important thing is that creativity is a habit. It requires work. We can't, if we stop doing, we aren't creative, that we need to keep doing things. And that creativity also requires a lot of distraction in the midst of its work. So when she conducted some interviews with some big name creativity gurus, we found that confidence, individual expression, exposure, active participation, comfort, order, and serenity were all really important in what she was doing. And when they talked about the environment, they were talking about that they needed physical activity. So you got to be able to get out and be active. You need some sort of escape, so someplace that you can retreat and turn inwards and be introspective. Some environment that gives some sort of comfort, order, serenity. So for some people, they can't work in a messy place. For other people, too much order drives them nuts. They gotta have a little bit of messy, so whatever it works for them. White noise, to provide some sort of background that sort of helps people not have so much distraction. Natural elements and exposure to the outside, storage, space for your stuff, and most importantly, food. Because if you're a creative type, you'll get into a zone and you'll keep working and you want to keep working, and before you know it, you spend 12 hours and you're like, I'm starving. So when we looked at the environment, things that we saw that were really important is interaction. We'll talk a little bit about that. Solitary spaces, being able to be attached to the place, and then also having some sort of sensory engagement. Interaction, we're going to talk about solitary spaces first, are either enclosed spaces, semi-enclosed spaces, or sort of open zoned areas. So you needed a place where you could retreat, but not always be always alone. Sometimes you wanted to have some connection to other people. When we're talking about interaction, some of it needed to be planned interaction, a meeting space, a coffee shop. We're going to go here to do this event. Some of it needs to be opportunistic. You might have been standing in line today and met somebody interesting and they gave you an idea, or the coffee pot, water cooler kind of discussion. But also anonymous interaction was really important for the creative process. Someplace where people could put things up on a wall, make notes on a board, other people contribute to it, those sorts of things. Stimulating creativity, particularly with place attachment, there needed to be a way that people could personalize their space. If they weren't able to personalize their space, it didn't feel at home, they didn't feel as comfortable. There needed to be an ability to control. Can I change the lighting? Can I change the temperature? Can I change the color? And those sorts of things. And then, of course, comfort. So you had to be feel good about where you were. And then the last one is sensory engagement. So being able to look at something different, engage with plants and animals, get connection to nature, but also unusual spaces, things that would stimulate change, those sorts of things. And this is probably the area that we don't often find within our work environments that we actually go out and see someplace else. Although they could be within the work environment. And so these were some of the things that we found in our sort of study on creativity. As you can see, we have lots of references. I'm happy to take emails and send those to you. Let's talk a little bit about why somebody becomes a good speaker.
My turn?
Your turn.
So, I'm Andrew Waguespack. I'm the real estate guy here in the room. And to tie into Meldrena, so we work with a lot of technology companies. We work with law firms, accounting firms, but Atlanta is becoming the super hub for technology, as you all know. And now the media industry is coming to Atlanta. We're seeing walking downtown Decatur, and we're seeing a lot of people from Hollywood. So we're starting to see that Atlanta is a real popular destination. And so we all feel like the gaming community, you all out there, is the next exciting, big movement that's going to be coming to Atlanta. So how can we be a resource to you all, the gaming community, provide a resource to you for new games that you're developing, applications, and hiring people and recruiting college graduates to come work for your organization, and then providing an environment for you and your employees that's an exciting place to work. So, as y'all are hearing, Atlanta is catching up with San Francisco, with Austin, Texas, with New York, with Washington, D.C. And why is that? Well, it's the #1 place for college graduates. It's the #1 place for entrepreneurs. It's the #2 city in the United States for millennials, you guys. It's the largest VC hub in the southeastern United States. Hartsfield is a 2-hour flight to 80% of the U.S. cities. So you can get on a plane and get to about anywhere you need to go in the United States. It's a digital media super hub. And it's obviously very talent-rich for people like you all to go work for these fantastic organizations, starting new companies, and like SCAD, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Emory, Brown, Clark Atlanta, Kennesaw State, Spelman. Who am I missing? Gwinnett Tech? Want to make sure I include you?
There's actually
UGA?
There's actually 48 colleges in the metro Atlanta area.
48. So
that's a lot.
yeah.
That's a lot
So
of education.
this is extremely exciting, and we're here to be a part of the next wave, which is, we feel, you all, the gaming community, which is extremely exciting. So, okay, now we know we want to be in Atlanta. So once we get to Atlanta, now where do we go? Do we go to, and I don't know if you can see this map really well, but you can go out to the suburbs, or you can go into the urban part of Atlanta. So how do you determine that? What's driving where Hi-Res Studios goes? Where do their employees live? Where do Tripwire's employees live? A lot of that was generated by where the studio is. Where's the future of that going? Why is Hunt's Market so hot on the east part of town near Decatur for companies like Athena Health and MailChimp? Why is the west part of town so crowded near Georgia Tech with companies like ACDC, Bento Box, Scout Mob, Moxie Interactive? All these companies are going to the west side of town, and then you have Midtown, Atlantic Station, which used to be a steel mill, and you have Sage Software and WorldPay going to Midtown, along with companies like NCR moving into town. And people ask me all the time, why do they do this? Recruiting, retention, MARTA access. I can get on MARTA, I can ride into town, I can live in the burbs. So that's very exciting. And then you have a lot of incubators, Venture Labs, International Technology Development Center, MIT Forum, Atlanta Tech Village, which you all are starting to hear about if you haven't heard already, Buckhead. So all of these incubators are really driving a lot of this growth. And they're not just tech focused, they're going to start to become game focused, like you guys are. YICAC, N3, all of these exciting high-growth companies that are exploding right now. Y'all are going to go out and do this. Central Perimeter, another hot market. Mercedes-Benz, you may have heard, is going there. Big relocation. Atlanta Falcons are introducing Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is going to be really cool. State Farm is in Central Perimeter. So it depends on the culture of the company, and I think Deirdre and Geneva are going to get into how culture drives the space. So like I said, what part of Atlanta, that gets into the subsets of Atlanta. And a lot of depends on the culture of you all, your environment that you provide for employees, and all these different kinds of office buildings provide a very different unique feature to your environment. It might be a new Class A office building, which is the next station. It might be a redo, retrofit building like Knott's Market, which used to be the Sears Roebuck building. I don't know if that were around long enough. North Yards, which is on the west part of town, is a lot of the retrofitted industrial and mills that they've turned into new cool office buildings like they're doing in San Francisco and New York, in the meat packing. And then 525 North Avenue in the very top center is a perfect example of a new building where it is literally a crack house right now. And I saw it last week, and they're all building houses down and turning this into a really cool live, work, and play environment. And then going out into the burbs and the sky's wide open, going into a shopping center, it could be y'all's new gaming headquarters. So it's all over the map, and it just depends on the nature and the focus of each of them. I think at this point, I don't know if I'm going to let ladies dive now that we've gotten in Atlanta, now that we're in a particular part of Atlanta, now we want to create a particular environment for our particular space.
So I'm Deirdre O'Sullivan, Geneva Evans. So we're both interior designers, and we work for a company called IdeaSpan. And so our job on a daily basis is to really work with companies who are looking for space, developing space, and get to know them and really understand who are you, what are you all about, who are the people you're trying to attract and retain, and how do we craft an environment that's going to support what you're doing. So we're really advocates, if you will, for helping you accelerate your business, build a culture that's going to help you be successful. And we're interested in hearing and having some discussion about questions in here. So we're not going to spend too much time talking on it, but just what we've seen and what we're seeing is not just digital media, gaming companies, but really everyone in the world today is looking to find ways to attract talent. And there's a real competition out there for it. The world has changed. So understanding what the people you're trying to attract value is really key, and then finding ways to provide that for them. And linking your strategy, your business strategy to your environment. There can't really be a disconnect. It has to ring true and be authentic, and where you live and what your space looks and feels like is part of that. We're seeing a lot of things happen that are different, like having make people comfortable. Meldrena talked about that. I mean, that might be food and drink. It might be being able for your pet to work. It might be, you did work a 12-hour day and you need someplace to go take a nap. So you got something going, you're going to come back to it in 4 or 5 hours. So really thinking differently, and workplace is kind of becoming a place where life happens. It's not just work. So there's real interest, I think, in work-life balance.
Yeah, and I've actually heard it recently referred to work-life balance. People are calling it work-life blend. It's becoming more and more of that. You're spending a lot of time at work. And so people start to value the social aspects of being at work and connecting with other people, but you also have a job to get done. So finding that right mix of spaces to support that is important.
And when you look at these spaces, they don't really look like conventional office space. And I think that's part of it. Creating kind of a rich palette of experiences that they choose based on what they need to do. In terms of culture too, I'm a real strong advocate that the space can help you. It's not the only thing, but it's something that really can accelerate it. So bringing people together, giving them a place to connect, expressing what the company's values are, really getting a unified sense of purpose and mission is needed, and then allowing people to express themselves. Meldrena, again, you talked about that. People need to surround themselves with things that inspire them. So we see, people, curating collections and interesting stuff, and that really, sparks other creativity. We did a project with Cartoon Network, and after the project was done, everyone came in and redid their own workspace. And the person who bought the furniture said, "I'm not going to own my furniture anymore because I'm just wasting money." They want to make it their own. So that is an important part of it.
And so this is just additional imagery of how people are doing that. It could be something visual, like things on the wall. It could be your physical space. We actually just, in our office, shifted to an all open workspace, and we readdress, most of us readdress, which means we have various different places that you can pick to work based on what you can do that day. And you may move from day to day, you may reconfigure your team to actually sort of foster an interesting growth for our young folks, because you can bond with people and kind of have this new energy happen.
Yeah, I think people have fun together. If you deepen your personal relationships with the people you work with, it helps you communicate better in every way with them.
So it's interesting to think about in a game design company, are you going to have all of your programmers sitting in one room, all your coders sitting in a group, all your art people sitting in a group, all your sales people sitting in a group? Or are you going to split that up and be like, we are the team that is making game A, and we're all going to be together, and then we are the team that's making game B, and we're all going to be together? So it depends on how you work and what your culture is, and what you want to promote.
That's kind of a perfect segue to the next thing. So really, that ability to flow between private and quiet space and collaborative space, and do that effortlessly is very important. Because if you think about the different tasks that your team needs to do, some of it's going to need quiet and concentration and very focused. Some of it is going to be very lively, and sometimes it's going to be both, just at different times wherever you are in the process. So how do you create space where that can happen, and how do you engender exchange of ideas, so collaboration, whether that be planned or spontaneous or over the shoulder. The space and how we arrange it can help do that. Another thing we're seeing is that variety is important. How do you feel that day, and what do you need? And is there a space that you can go to that's different, not institutional? Again, just kind of inspiring, unusual, giving you the option to take a different way of working. Some of it is sort of relaxed and lounge, different postures, sit, stand up, we're seeing a lot of coming into play.
So just to jump off here, kind of heard a little bit about what the world is doing, and especially Atlanta. And I know we have some young folks there, and I'd like to hear from you, specifically, you just graduated. So what are you looking for in a workplace as someone right out of school?
Specifically space.
Or if you're you mentioned you were looking at different companies, what is going to draw you to one company over another? What sorts of things are important?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I do like having my own space, but being able to talk to people in other departments, so people do the same things as me, I want to learn all of them. They grow as developers. And also, I also, other people. I really like other people. If I am with people that know the same person, that I'm not as helpful.
Yeah. So I think it's important to think about, when we're thinking about companies, is not only how are we going to talk within our company, to the people that are with us, but who also is surrounding us. And so when my people need a break and they go down the street for a donut, who are they going to be talking to? Are we going to get other exciting, interesting, ideas, or is it all just going to be people that are in our space, focusing on us. And if you're in the game industry, you also have to think about how does that happen 24/7, not just how does that happen between 9 to 5. Some of our game companies are just 9 to 5, but very few of them, right? Most of us do most desk work at midnight, right? So, kind of interesting about that.
Do you have any questions or anything?
I guess I'll add to that. I think the cross-pollination is like really, really important, particularly for tech, because it's always sort of this like moving target, right? Like, and the thing about tech people and gamers in particular is there's not really this sort of cutoff, which is a great point, of 9 to 5, I'm working on games, right? Like I'm working on a game, but then I also have my own project that I'm working on, or some other skill that I'm trying to pursue, and so I think it's important for me, like to have the cluster effect, like I can walk out my door and there's somebody right next to me who can teach me something, but then also, even when I'm not necessarily working the job, I think it's important to have people that I can learn from and then also people that I can teach. Like, so I think it's really important to have not just professionals, right? Like I think I like companies that like they have their work, but then they're also contributing somehow to their larger community in some way, shape, or form. So like making that like more easily done is great, so inviting people into your space, right? Like not just kind of shutting it off for just your company, but inviting people into the space is extremely important too.
So if you're going to take a part in that, and I think GTDA has been doing a really good job of that, where they ask different firms to host different meetings.
Right.
But if you're going to be a firm that's going to host a meeting, you've got to think about where can I put people? Like, do we have a space that's sort of big enough that I can push back some tables and chairs and we can get a lot of people mingling? Or do we have a big, huge meeting space like this where we get a lot of people around the table? Or do we have a big screen where we're sitting in an auditorium and people are watching stuff? So it's kind of challenging, though, to think as a young company, how big space do I need, because we need more than just us. And how do we sort of afford that, and how can it be useful to us when we don't have the community in as well?
Right.
Well, and I think, we do see even large organizations not being willing to dedicate space for those sorts of events only. It has to be smarter. It has to function, for other things throughout the day. So it may be, break for the lunch, but maybe something totally different at 5 o'clock when you're hosting an event.
Right.
The other thing that I thought you said, both of y'all, that's really interesting and key and not easy to do, is that right level of connectivity and privacy. I mean, that really is something that as you develop your space, to think about, and maybe even, engage your team in some of that kind of dialogue. I think that, that issue of itself, the visual connectivity, can just help with openness or glass. But also, when you're not at your desk and you walk into the bathroom and get a cup of coffee, what is that experience like, and what opportunities does that afford for you to sort of cross paths and have some spontaneous interaction? And then the after-hour events is a great way to build that community we were talking about, where we had one client who went in after and did a post occupancy, and the feedback we got was like they were totally open. It was like, I now know, my coworkers, dog's name and this and that, and I it's helping to work with them because, I'm more invested.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. And a lot of what we're here to help y'all is to find a work-life balance. And I don't know if you told the story about Facebook. But I had heard the story that a lot of Facebook employees, they sit across from each other in these bed-shaped environments, and you're at work when you're on your headphones. And you're not at work when you take your headphones off. You're in social mode, literally sitting across from each other. And then they sleep in the parking lot, RV parking lots. So that may be a little bit extreme, but it may not be, depending on where everyone's going and what kind of environment you want. So we're seeing all various extremes of how people work and gaming worlds, you know, y'all be working a lot in creating a live-work balance and being able to be at work, be happy at work, and have some sort of personal life at the same time.
Well, you're also referencing like a multi-billion dollar company, like the Google, the EA, the Facebook, and stuff like
Yes.
that. They have that luxury, whereas us small indie guys, we don't really have that kind of luxury. But for us that are looking into creating that workspace, we're aware that our programmers love to be locked into this little dark spot, and this is their focus area right here. They don't want to do anything else, right? The majority of my programmers that I've worked with are like that. Not all of them. That's my office. Joe's one of my heroes as well. So I mean, he's doing something that I want to do with my company, which is being able to help recent grads or current students in getting into the job, but in a working environment. So exposing them through of education through a working environment. So where does that balance? I guess this is maybe something where I need to talk to you afterwards.
I think there are some things that we can think about. So like, if you don't have a lot of space, but we know we need a place to have coffee and food. And instead of choosing, just tables and chairs, maybe we want to decide that we've got a full-length couch and we've got a little bar where we can sit and have a sandwich, but there's a couch that I can sit on and have a snack, or I can lay down and sleep. So like that we're trying to use our space really, really effectively. I like the sort of headphones on thing. I can remember that one company that we worked with, they had these sort of like half panels behind their computer screens, and you couldn't really see each other. And they left the part in the middle open so that when you slip your chair over, you were talking to whoever was across the table from you. But when you slip back, it's like, nope, I'm in my office now. So I think as long as you really think about how you work and try to be proactive in what you're providing, but you don't necessarily have to have a lot of space and a lot of money. It's not very expensive to put a hammock on the wall. It's expensive to put a slide in the middle of your cafeteria like Google has. Yes, it is.
I think it's interesting. I can totally off a little bit. Because it just doesn't seem authentic, it just seems a little kind of over the top, and we're trying to be different to be different. And there is that factor when people come to you and they might be considering working at your office, you do have to have differentiators. But what are those? And are they authentic? And are they tied to what you're trying to achieve, as an organization? So, it's funny, we work with a lot of very big companies, and, a lot of them now, there's one in particular that we're working with, and, their CEO has said we've lost our edge, and they are a entertainment company, and we need to be more gritty, more like where we came from, and have more of an entrepreneurial, startup mentality. So they're trying to figure out how to get back to that. There's something about being able to create something small and make it work that allows you to really build a strong culture. The bigger you get, the harder it is to really keep that true. So, I think that the issue of, headphones or whatever it might be, we're, like you said, we're learning, we're in a totally, not totally different, pretty different environment. Culturally, having kind of signals or codes and conduct on how you use the space, those evolve over time, and they really help people understand, when you're in an interactive mode and when you really need to do heads down stuff.
Deirdre and Meldrena, could you actually talk a little bit about exactly the opposite? There's a push toward creativity in the workspace, but there's also a contrast of productivity in the workspace that can easily go overboard in one direction or another. For example, as you're saying, the Google environment as can be very creative and productive, but there is that mode where there's too much distraction, where you have to put on those headphones to almost screen out. And you talked a little bit about privacy, but how much can be too much of that?
So one of the things that happens with us in a psychological and neuroscience viewpoint is that there are people that are called screeners and non-screeners. Screeners they have no idea what's going on out in the hall, it doesn't matter. The non-screener sitting in the room is like, why are they making all that noise that's driving me nuts? So there is this sort of biological and potentially psychological difference in some of us. Some of us can work in a really big environment, distracting environment, and others of us cannot. And so I think as an employer, you sort of have to figure out who on your team has what capabilities and what kind of settings are you going to help to provide them. If somebody needs a lot of enclosure, do we have a couple of spaces where you could go by yourself and have a lot of enclosure and have a lot of privacy in order to get your work done? If you're the kind of person that thrives in a lot of collaboration and like a lot of loud music and that kind of stuff, do we have a setting where that's okay as well? Or maybe we set up flexible work times, quiet more, from 8 to 11, we're going to be really quiet. From 7 to 10, we're going to be really loud, and see what works for what group of people. But it's not just environment, it has to do with us as individuals. So it can be really difficult to, say what's too much. You've seen firms that, you put everything out front and it's really loud and, the lobby looks exciting and then it's all quiet in the back. What's your experience?
And so what I would say to that is, I think that how you plan the space, like when I said earlier, it's really important that mix between privacy and collaboration. You only have so many square feet and you have so many people, and you don't know if you may grow tomorrow by, 15, 20 people. So figuring out how you zone the space, so you're offering, opportunities where it can be, if you're one of those people who can filter it, you can be there all day, if that really, stimulates you. And if you don't, there's other zones. I would say what we're seeing is that there is kind of a pushback. There's been a big trend to go open, everybody should see each other, everybody should be able to be connected, with everybody else 100% of the time. And, I think there is a sense now that, comfort is important and privacy is part of comfort, and that there are periods of time when everybody needs that. Some people need it more than others. So again, it's that balance, and there's no formula.
The research shows that productivity actually goes down in an open office, and that you need a balance of a little of both. Yeah. And it depends on how big your open office is. An open office of 6 is a lot more productive than an open office of 45.
Yeah, and tied to that, just to be practical, because you guys have mentioned cost, and cost is always part of designing a space. If everyone has private space, what does that footprint look like, and what does the overall requirement look like, versus if everyone is in open? I can tell you it's going to be a lot more efficient if everybody's in open. So that's that balance again. And, I think it goes back to, you'll have a certain budget, you'll have a certain square footage. How are you going to prioritize? And I would just advocate that spending the time to be thoughtful about design is going to, pay off in the long run. I know people think design is money, but really design is just, a process to create an environment that's going to improve function.
I can think of one used flag that we used to get back in the day, we used to have guys that would probably go in the dark. Some would either go work at home, or some would almost put the do not disturb sign up kind of thing. To me, that's a red flag that something wrong with your work environment. Do you have other red flags that you guys notice? How can you tell when the design space isn't that appropriate?
When the what days?
When your workspace is broken, when the solution, when either the solution or non-solution isn't working, how do you determine?
Well, I would say, are we being as productive as we should be? If our productivity is lacking, there's something wrong there. I would say, are we retaining the talent that we have, or are we losing it? If we're losing it, there's something wrong here. So, I mean, those are the things that I would look at. I would say, are people laughing or hanging out? Do people walk out the door at 5 o'clock, or are they there at 6:30 chatting with coworkers? I mean, those are all sort of tells. You can tell when you walk into a space, or I can, you get a vibe or a sense of energy, and so that's, if I wasn't feeling that, that's what I would be worried about.
Right, and if people don't want to be in the environment, then we have to figure out, is it the environment, the work culture, or a third entity, you know, like a pain in the butt boss or whatever, that is making people not want to be there. Now, I will say that as an advocate of the environment, you know, and a consultant, this is a horrible thing to tell you, but sometimes the environment doesn't matter. You know, sometimes it's the people that you're with. So, a good story of this, senior living care facilities. I have been in the worst looking, most horrible, dreadful, tiny little building, and the old ladies love it because their caregivers are so awesome. Yeah, and I've been in the bestest, grandest, most fascinating thing, and the old people are like, I can't see anything, and nobody will help me, and I don't know my neighbors, you know. So sometimes it's about the people that make the space as comfortable as the setting. Now, I will say that a nice setting, though, can help a really great group of people succeed a lot. You know? And you've got to have space for what you do, and think about your process and how you do it. You know, like, if your printer is on the other side of the room and you're having to get up 45 times a day, unless you want to lose weight, that's a bad thing. You know? Or if you need to get up and exercise because you're working 24 hours a day, that's a good thing. But maybe it's too much of a distraction. So you have to think about how you work and what you do and what might be the right environment for you.
Focus group. Aside, but we did a, sorry, I did a, we did a focus group with the existing employees. What works for you? What do you want? And we implemented the furniture to set up a different types of workstations. Do you like this? Do you like that? And so our particular result is natural light. In the gaming industry, probably dark is better. Maybe not. Okay, maybe not. See, you don't know that the
confliction there. I mean, and the places need to see that there's a confliction. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but that's good. So you assume one thing. You did a focus group. Oh, that's not the case. And we did a workstation and bench. The bench was the trend. Everybody's going benching. Open and more platform. And focus group, 80%, 90%, they want in a workstation with some privacy. So what did we do? We went to the workstation. You know, we want to keep the talent, we want to keep the employees happy, and you know, we can't give them a 20 by 20 office for everybody. You know, this is the budget, but we went with a smaller, maybe a foot or two smaller workstation. A little bit lower so you can actually see other people, but lower to maintain the privacy. And our square footage per person went down because everybody gave up, you know, 10 by 15 office, now it's 10 by 10. But we have more common area, we have a great break room that we can throw a party, you know, so people collaborate. So the per footprint we went down, cost savings, right? But more collaboration, smaller individual pod, whether it's a private office workstation, and we would prefer a natural light consciousness. So there are a lot of different ways, but I think the focus group is asking.
So there are a couple of trends that are going on, and they're not really trends, they're really facts, but they're popular now, so we call them trends. One of the things that you have to be careful about as somebody that's planning a space, any type of space, is what's the hidden program of that space. The hidden program refers to our psychosocial understanding of the people, function, programming, and physical characteristics of space. So when I say game studio, each one of you has a little thought that pops up in the back of your head of what that ought to be like. If you've got a group of 10 people that have 10 different visions of game studio, you can't keep all of them satisfied. So if you have sort of a little meeting and you know, whether it's pulling out pictures out of magazines or taking snapshots of places, and you start to talk about, you know, what should our company look like, you can get some sort of ideas about it. A good way to tell you how this works is if I say church, all of you automatically, whether you thought about it or not, you know, thought really hard, thought about that there's a minister in front, there's a choir, there's a congregation, there's, you know, and we sit, pray, sing, we're reflective. It's completely different than if I say stadium. Because now you're thinking, you know, hot dogs, beer, cheering, loud, football players, you know, referees stand in a big oval. And so we've automatically made a space association with the place. And the hidden program is helpful when we're trying to define what something is, but it's also harmful when we're trying to be innovative because we can't think beyond that understanding that we have. And so if you're trying to figure out a new way to work, you know, like we got to recognize what our patterns are and how we can get out of it. The other thing that's really popular, and I'm sure Deirdre and Geneva that you're running into this, is what's being called biophilic design, which is this sort of connection not only with nature but with like natural rhythms. And so, you know, how much daylight do we get into the office? It's amazing how in most industries productivity changes, health increases, happiness increases, you know, all of these things when we have exposure to daylight. Can we tell the passage of time throughout the day? I know that at least 2 people in this room have been in SCAD's building before. You can spend a whole entire day in SCAD and never know if it's raining or not.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I'm sure lots of you have been in settings like that. You know, when you realize that, you know, oh yeah, I got here early, it was dark when I came in, it was dark when I left, I just missed the whole entire day, it makes us unhappy people, and we lose our circadian rhythm. And so if we have some sort of exposure to time and the passage of time, that actually helps us physically regulate our metabolism. So there's a lot of interesting things to take into consideration. I think we've got about 10, maybe 15 more minutes at the most. If anybody has some particular questions, or Deirdre and Geneva, any more insights?
One more, you know, we're here to help the employer create an environment to draw the best people and then keep them there and then get them to work, actually work so that you all can be successful and then create an environment for the employees who want to come to work and stay late and work but still have a quality of life. And we thought we saw a quick trend where everybody was going to work at home, the telecommuting thing. And then, you know, everybody's going to log in on their computers, and I'm going to work from home, and my boss is going to see me log in, and I'm going to go to the refrigerator, and Oprah Winfrey's on, and I'm going to get a beer, and this is all great.
Day right there.
And then, that really didn't happen.
Oprah's not on anymore.
Yeah.
It's Ellen.
You're right. Exactly. So, I'll come up with a better example. But now we're finding, and Deirdre and Geneva will tell me if I'm wrong, but people, if you create a really fun, cool environment, it creates teamwork, it creates bonding, synergy, and we did that with our company, and people want to come to work, and they want to see other people, and quite honestly, want to get out of the house and maybe away from their spouse, or their girlfriend, or their boyfriend, or whatever, or both, and become and feel like they're part of something, a movement. So, I don't know if that's
Part of how you make sort of that place and that movement is thinking about what your company culture is and what your brand is. And a good design team, probably even a bad design team, can give you some ideas about how you can put that culture into your space. It's real easy when you think sort of real blatantly. So like if you've got a sustainable company and it's, you know, run by a bunch of ex-hippies that used to, you know, follow the Grateful Dead around, you're going to have a lot of recycling, you're going to have a lot of natural materials, you're going to have used, you know, pallets to create furniture pieces, you're going to buy secondhand stuff, you know, like, you're going to have tie-dye curtains, you know. And so you want to think about how do you integrate that in. But first, before you start to integrate things in, you have to identify what your culture is. You know, like, what's my company about? What's at our essence and what's at our heart? And a lot of times a conversation with somebody, you know, like IdeaSpan can help. Before they even help you get to design, they can help you figure out who it is that you are and how you work and what's your culture about. Because there's always going to be what a company says they do, and then what a company actually thinks they do, and what a company actually does. And so sometimes bringing in a design group, you know, and saying, just come visit with us, you know, and watch us, and because we think we work like this, but maybe we don't, you know, and you sort of have to find who you are and what you're about. Or if you say, hey, we want to be about this, well, how do we translate that into physical space? And I'm sure you have lots of clients that have come to you and ask for that.
So, I mean, I think that talking about those issues may not be something you get to do every day. Most of our clients don't. They're working and running a business. And so having that conversation, you know, as you begin to think about a new space or creating space, lets a lot of things bubble up that maybe don't get talked about every day. You also get to hear your peers express their perspectives, and so you may learn things that help you build consensus and really fine-tune your areas of focus. So I think that's a really valuable thing. The other thing we've seen, typically we'll do that with kind of a steering committee, if you will, or a leadership group. When we go deeper, if the client is interested, we do focus groups with a broader, you know, segment of their population. And you know, what I've found really interesting is the things that come out of that steering committee and the things that come out of the focus groups when you talk to, like, you know, 15 to 20% of the employees can be extremely different. And you can find out things that you bring that back and you talk about it. They're like, I had no idea that was an issue. You know what? It really is. You may not know this is a concern, but it's something we can address so easily. So I definitely agree.
And we found that there's a whole industry area called culture change that particularly deals with design. And when you're trying to evolve your company into the next step and sort of alter the way that you function, having that buy-in and having those opinions of everybody is really important. And as a design, you know, game company, a lot of them are really small. There's no reason why you shouldn't have, you know, everybody at the table. If you've got 12 employees, it's us everybody. You know, what is our company about?
Well, and you know, I'll just say,
if you've got 12, it's fine. If you've got 220,
I mean, part of it is, you know, do you want everyone's input, or in what arena do you want it? Because you may know what your constraints are, you may have real constraints, and they may not be part of all of that. But I think there's a way to do some engagement with everyone, and then it's not saying, okay, it's a wish list, you know, it's open, wide open, it's within the framework and parameters. But that just being asked is really huge. And when you think about what you do every day and pieces of ownership that people have to have, that you really want them to have and take forward, this is part of building that. Like, you're contributing, your thoughts are important, and that filters through to everything they do.
Some of those things that surface during those types of engagement activities aren't necessarily big. Like, they don't be huge satisfiers. Like, I think one of yours access to good coffee. Like, you said in your condition earlier, like, access to food, it's a huge deal, but it's something so simple.
And it might not have to be you offering it in the space. But maybe if access to good coffee is important, then you can go to a realtor guy and go, all right, I gotta be within walking distance of good coffee, you know? And so you start looking, you know, for a space, you know, or maybe it's that, well, we bring all of our dogs to work, so we need to be near a dog park, you know, whatever.
Be specific, should it say cold food?
We'll put that in the Yelp app. It will be within walking distance.
I think we've only got about 2 minutes left or so. So if you have any questions,
Sorry, just one minor comment. I've worked in a group of 25 people, and I'm now working in a group of close to 50 people. And one thing that's really stuck out to me was it felt nice to be able to work in a space where I felt like I had control of where I worked and how I worked. Which, as y'all have mentioned before, giving them the options to do all this, but at the most basic part, give them let them work with a laptop, even if that means giving them a docking station so they can sit at a desk and monitors and everything. I just wanted to iterate. Laptop is really nice. Getting your toys laptop.
Well, and I'll say we've gone to, like Geneva said, kind of a free address for whoever wanted to do it. Some of us even though it was like but that's key. It doesn't work if they don't have a laptop. You can't go to this space. So that's a commitment. But believe me, it's worth. I would say it's worth.
I think we have to think about all types of technology because technology is really changing. If you look at, I believe it was Steelcase that did a research project called Palette Posture, and what they were looking at was actually how people work. And we're working on monitors, we're working on laptops, we're working on tablets, we're working on phones, and we sit in different postures with each of these different technologies. And so how is our environment supporting all those different types of work? Because you're not just working in one technological way. We're working in multiple ways. We're working on screens, we're working on big screens, small screens, all kinds of things. And so thinking about how are you going to integrate technology in a smart way that's hopefully going to last you more, because technology is a big investment.
Whenever I was able to use a laptop, we had different workstations and you could choose and having the ability to have a dock and see the
then you have two different ways of working. And when I want to work really focused, I can sit at my desk and work. And when I want to work really relaxed, because I just have to review this or whatever, I can sit on the couch and do whatever.
I'm a small guy that probably have a lot to do with our budget.
Yeah.
If we can afford to allow, each individual employee to have a luxury of a laptop, we may not have that. I know I can. So, I would love to be able to give it to you, but.
Yeah, well, if they're within the same price range as a desktop versus laptop, then that would be an option for you, but it's not.
Right.
It's getting closer.
It is. It's getting closer. The power of the tower is, there's an obvious difference between what you can process.
So the other thing that we can think about too, and I know that we get into all kinds of ownership and technology and stuff, but are there other creative ways to think about it? So do you have an employee that says, I'm going to own laptop to work at, as a work laptop? And so I think we just need to think sort of creatively about how we do this. And when we're talking about technology, by the way, think about where the power for that technology comes from. We have a lovely whole first floor of where I work, and I won't mention it, and it has no power in the floor. And so we have to have all these interesting drop cords come down from the ceiling. And so basically we have to teach hand drafting in the first floor because we don't have a place to put a computer lab.
Time for renovation.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.